Does it feel different? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, and I am your Sensei Al Bob. And we're on the bop, and we have been pretty much last month or so. Here's my beautiful living establishment, and have you guys gotten used to it yet? The new normal, right? The ever increasing, we 126,000 recorded 19s, we're going to hit herd immunity soon. We're not going to need any, vaccine. And, probably, I would say, if we keep getting over 120,000 folks reporting every single day, I would say by New Year's, we may get close to a million reported deceased, but who knows what they die. I don't, I'm out in the woods. I have no idea about any of this, and I don't listen to, I don't get any media whatsoever. It's whatever I get over the radio or when I bop into a place that has Wi-Fi and I can spend a few minutes, like with our good friend. Hey, I'm come on, stop it. Here we go. This guy.
Well, what happens?
Okay.
Hey, the election results are coming in, and the winner is Goldman Sachs. Wall Street, the military-industrial complex, health insurance CEOs, and out-of-control inequality and corruption. Whoopee! What now? Everything. The libs are going to go back to sleep at their long collective brunch, and I say good. We don't need them. They only get in the way anyway. America has elected the architect of the system that gave us the last 4 years. Expecting that architect to fix our problems is final proof that America is a failed state. Well, what happens next? It doesn't matter who's in the House or in the Senate. We, the people, must rise up. We must make demands. Americans need health care now. Americans need a stimulus check now. Americans need the wars to end now. They need a living wage now. Being in the streets isn't enough, unless that street is in front of the White House, City Hall, or a politician's home. Politicians stand for nothing unless we are standing on them. Accept no more excuse from Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Bernie Sanders. Movements have to move. Workers have the power. Workers make this nation run. Workers make the profits. Labor needs to exercise this power now. We need to stop talking about pushing the nation left. We're not pushing the nation left. We're pushing the nation back to the people. No matter what the political hacks try to convince you of, America has elected a unified racist into the presidency. Joe Biden has done more damage to the minorities with policy, more damage to minorities than all of Donald Trump's tweets combined. Democrats' marketing campaign.
Yeah, I couldn't say any better than Jimmy Dore. That guy he's aces in my spam. Let's see. Tell the story about Anthony. Good to see you, buddy. I have been writing on my legend. And as soon as I can figure out how legend, if you go to xratted.blogspot.com, Legend's up there, but it's in the first, cut. When it's probably number one Legend is probably from 4 or 5 months ago, right? And then I have like I think 2 or 5 up there, but I put the wrong thing, and it just goes back to number one, right? So I'm at 6 right now, and I have a ton, like at least another 70 pages on top of where Legend. I have about 200 pages there, but again, it's like I say, the first thing before that clipboard notification. The rest is just stream of consciousness. The first part, so about the first 50, 60 pages in cut one, it's kind of a few more times, so it's a little more, uh, you can understand it better. But stories, here I am, your griot, I tell you stories. So the story Anthony wants is the story of, I was the dude in New York. From age 9, well, age 9 until age 17, I was the kid. I mean, that's what I was, not the kid. And I hung out, meaning, so I worked for Grandpa Stahl, and I was trained as an electrician. And by the time I was 11, I was pretty good. I could go out and fix things on my own at 11, right? And their shop kind of had two sides to it. There was a union, because Grandpa, him and this other guy started, the IBEW in New York, in National Brotherhood Electric Workers, which goes back to Jimmy. Workers, you better start to unite. Kamala Harris is going to be the leader of the resistance in whatchamacallit, in Hunger Games, and after she won, that's what happened to her. And so the Mockingbird let it fly. So and that's where we're at. We're at, it's the same as it ever was, probably, kids. We do not have a linear timeline, right? It's all at the same time. So whatever I was going through at 9, I'm going through right now. Whatever, it's like your whole freaking life is right now. It's what you make of it, how you deal with it. And the major reason why we're here is to learn how to grow, how to ascend, how to become a better, good thoughts bring good words bring good actions bring good endeavors bring good outcomes. So it's part of the great law. And there I was, the kid, and it enables me. I made, when I was 17, I was the master electrician at Fillmore East. I was working for Michael Moody. I was working for Lester Polikoff. I was working for, these were all really amazing designers. So I worked in all the houses, Broadway. So Grandpa got me into Local 3. I worked on the World Trade Center at 19. So I was real familiar with those buildings. So I knew they couldn't come down when an airplane crashed. No. It turned into dust. No. If you go to look at architects and engineers, 9/11, you will, they are real. They took it apart. They forensically said, this is what happened. And there's a lady who's a physicist who, worked on Star Wars and said, these buildings came down from space-based energy weapon. Things were turned into dust. The buildings fell faster than gravity, so same as it ever was. So there I was, 19, and I did a lot of, not big union. So our shop was half union, more than half. The majority of the guys were union guys. We were all in the union. But there was a shop that had because Grandpa started Local 3, he put out a notch that any shop that been around X amount of years and had clientele that needed things to be fixed, whatever, but things that need to be fixed, that could be done under the auspices of a non-union thing. So it could be a bit cheaper, a little affordable, could not be so stringent to the rules and regs of the union. So anyway, I was, guys, I went around and fixed stuff. And hey there, fish. So And the other thing I would work on, there would be realtors. There was a company called Sylvan Lauren Realty, and what they did was they bought really old buildings and kind of redid them so they'd be more, you know, they can make more money on them. They put 1 meter in for the whole building, or they put 1 meter in for every apartment, every office, or fix this or did that, or put new lights in or whatever. I was a guy who would do that job, right? I would start it off. I'd get it going to a point where it would make more sense to bring in a crew to go fast, right? And so that's what I did. And in that, I got to do. I started doing restaurants and nightclubs and discotheques and theaters. And I worked for George and George, biggest theater manufacturing. The guys who take a theater and redo the inside. I mean, they became famous for Cats because they redid the whole inside and everything, so they could have all that pneumatic stuff and space flying saucers and blah blah blah. And they're the guys who built Circus Soleil's theater so people could fly through the air and all the above. So I worked for those guys as their electrician, right? Sometimes as their lighting designer, sometimes I would run crews like Phil Maurice. I ran, but I was still more the I wasn't like a grip, right? I didn't hang. I mean, I would, if I had to, I would. Whatever I had to do, I would, right? I never thought I can't do that. Because there were a lot of guys in the union said, nope, that's you got to go get our other brothers over there. So I was in a place I could do anything. So I worked for this company, and they would buy buildings, all different kinds, and renovate them to what the market needed. So they buildings like churches, and they took the church and turned it into the Saint, a nightclub. It was probably on 20 something street. So anyway, and a whole bunch of buildings like that, doing all different kinds of things. And there was a building on 9th and Avenue B that had been a nunnery that they turned into apartments because the loft scene was coming. Soho was it. So they were taking interesting buildings and turning them into, because the laws had changed so people could live in those things, right? So I did all this work for this one company, and this guy said, "Oh, listen, we just got this nunnery, and we're going to turn it in. So I want you to go there, with Grandpa Stahl and the inspector and the Con Ed guy, and figure out what needs to be done for, because they had like zero electricity, so we had to put a vault in the street and bring in Edison power into the building and put meter banks up and blah blah blah." Now that was a union job, but I was running it because I was in the union, because I was doing the rest of the stuff, right? And so the guys would come in, and lay it down, and then I would wire it. I would it's called terminating, bringing the wires to where they're going to go. They would, put in the pipes and the troughs and the panels and all the gear, and then I'd wire it up, and they would cut the holes and draw the pipes and bring in the risers to the different apartments and floors, and then I'd wire everything from that point on. And usually, the our shop would get, Grandpa Stahl would get, and Mike would get from the union, the guys, the dregs of the dregs. As long as they weren't drug addicts, if they need to be whipped into shape, they'd come and work for us, right? And they would work for me, and I would turn them into really good mechanics, right? That was what I was, one of my better trades. And I'm your sensei. I was a sensei electrician when I was 19. So anyway, living in this building, and the guy above me knocks on my door. I'm in the basement, but it's one of those basement things that's not real a basement. It's like in between. It's like, the windows are like right at sidewalk level. So I'm watching people's calves and knees and hips go by. And it's 67 when, 68 when the micro mini was in. So anyway, I'd be looking up, and what I had was in the back of this building was a beautiful garden. And so I had this big French door that walked out onto the garden from my apartment. My apartment was what is known as a railroad flat, went straight on through, had no amenities whatsoever. Like my kitchen was a hot plate. The toilet was bolted to the side of the wall, but there was a staircase in the middle of my apartment that took up half the middle. I turned it into a closet. I just stuck stuff on those steps. But anyway, one day, knock, 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 knock. I open my front door, which is kind of down from the sidewalk, and under the steps that are going up into the lobby of this place, of the nunnery that's now got apartments. And this really bushy, black hair, black beard, black glasses, white boy, Jewish boy, says, "Hey, I'm your upstairs neighbor. My name's Alan, and I can smell you like to cook." I said, "Yeah, I'm a good, yeah, I cook." And he goes, "And you got that big French door to go in that garden. I'm a gardener." And he goes, "Come upstairs." So I went up there, and his apartment had been the kitchen, dining room, and bathroom for the nuns, right? And they kind of took it out, but they left that kitchen stainless steel, garland stove, hood, you name it, it had it. Walk in fridge. And so Alan said, "Why don't we, I know you got the staircase that comes right up to my apartment. Why don't we just rip these boards up and be roommates? You can cook your hearts." And look at this bathroom. He had this bathroom that was like unbelievable. It was like white tile, everything, floor, ceiling, everything. It had a steam room. It had showers, like water pressure you couldn't believe, hot water, unlimited, and it had this, stainless steel fire hose that was on a kind of gimbal that you turned it on and it shot this jet straight across, smashed into the wall that was concrete, not even tiles, because the tiles would get blown off. And you turned it on and you got the right temperature, and then you kind of eased your way into it, and it would massage your whatever part of your body. It's this place where you could sit and get this thing right between your hoo-hoo. So, the girls were having a good time with this thing. So it was, I said, "Yeah." And I had no idea this guy was Allen Ginsberg. I just knew him as Alan, right? And he had the most interesting friends. So every Friday we would have these soirees, these avant-garde salons, potluck dinners, right? And so that's how I got into that world at 19. And all those guys needed things. "Oh, I got this walk needs to be wide. So I have a theater. Oh, So that's what got me into being the dude, right? So by the time I was 21, by the time I was 20, my draft, and I had already one of the things about New York, I could leave, stay away a year or two, and come back, and it was like I never left. I could, and so that was always there, and something you could invest in. And I basically got to know everybody, right? And they weren't like, oh, I knew all the rock and rollers from the Fillmore East. I knew all the big time people who made records, Jimi Hendrix, John Lennon. Everybody lived in New York, or so I worked at. I helped build Electric Ladyland. I helped run and build, Suntrack, and helped run and build Blue Rock, and on Spring Street there, not Spring Street, Green Street. And so I knew John Cale, right? I think John's still alive. And John's a really interesting guy, really, really talented, he's really, and all these people are normal people. John Lennon, I met him not through all of this. He did come to our soirees when I was younger, but I re-met him. And, I have this memory. I can remember the most arcane, esoteric stuff. But people, it's, when you were a kid and you weren't rich enough to have an Etch-a-Sketch, they had a piece of cardboard with a little plastic film, and you had a ice cream stick that you could draw on. And then when you were done, you just lifted up the film and the image went away. That's pretty much it, right? I remember faces, names. So I call everybody, if I can remember the first letter of your first name, that's, I'm like the Men in Black, So I went with a woman uptown near Lincoln Center, and there was this great, back in the day, they had lunch counters that were part of the pharmacy, and they had great breakfast, great lunch, and great creams and sodas and stuff like that, banana splits. So there was this one time we'd go in religiously and have breakfast, newspapers from around the world, and periodicals, like things from proceedings from the Navy saying what's going on. Aviation in Space Weekly. You didn't need the CIA. That thing said everything that was going on, and and you could just buy. Most of those journals you have to be signed in, right? But this place was the one place that you could buy whatever was there, right? Of course, I'm sure it was run by the CIA or the NSA or whoever, but because there were always TV cameras around this thing. So if you bought something, they knew you bought something. Then, I would go in and have breakfast. But mostly, I wouldn't, I would look at, see if what's not there. But the guy who ran the lunch counter, he was a really interesting guy. He wasn't the pharmacist. He like paid rent to the pharmacist to run this really wild, crazy lunch counter. And all these really interesting, people from, right across the street was Lincoln Center, and all these other, the Dakota was just down the street from this place. So everyone was pretty interesting, and he would have this whole end of the lunch counter covered in newspaper, Herald Tribune, New York Times, London Times, you name it, Moscow. So you didn't have to buy it from that guy. You could come in here, and he had a bunch of. He was a big airplane freak, so he had aviation in space. He had jazz. He had the Russian version of aviation in space, and so I would go in on Monday and see what he had, and maybe one or two magazines a week I would get from him because that guy outside had an amazing collection of stuff. Anyway, so I kind of got used to knowing people like that, and they were like my friends. They weren't like, oh my god, no. So I was dating a girl named what's her name, Jane Fire. That's a girl I should have married. She was amazing. She was during the punk days. She had a punk band, and Louis Tropia was an A&R executive. He was a producer. I don't know. He called himself an executive, but anyway, he called himself a record executive. But he was the guy who started, CBGBs, and he lived above, right? And on the backside was his brothel. I mean, it was basically CBGBs had been this old Tin Pan Alley, not in Tin Pan Alley, boozing place, and because there are all these little alleyways between Broadway and Second Avenue. So and the Bowery, and that was like the Bowery neighborhood. And the other thing that was there was Cooper Union College, University, where I was going to school. Well, anyway, so through Jane, and also this guy named Alan Tannenbaum, who was the photo editor for the Village Voice, and I knew him real well because I was a photographer, and I was a photojournalist, and I was part of a couple of photo entities like Magnum, and because I took a couple of pictures that got some play, and I knew a lot. My Lisette Modell was and Cardi Brisson were my teachers at the new school. So again, I ran in the right crowd, and that's really why you should go to college, is to meet people like that, right? Not go boozing and failing out in freshman year. Anyway, so I got to know John Cale and a whole bunch of his crew, right? I was living over in this on the west side. There was all the people who had started Soho when the rich people came in and bought us out, which was redlining, but we made a profit. We did okay, and they built this artist thing called West Bend. It had been a phone building, and it was right on the west side, and it was just so the city had it, and they got some developer to turn it into lofts, and then there was a list of artists, and since I was one of the guys that helped start Soho, I was on that list, and I got it, and I had a really amazing girlfriend at that time, who is a Ford model, Stephanie. She was sweet. No, she was Switzerland. She was Swiss. Her dad was banker, bureaucrat. But anyway, so that was another crowd. I mean, that had some real amazing folks living there. And again, I got that place. She was with me. I went and lived in Ireland for a good long time, and she came over with me, and we couldn't sublet our place out. You had to live there, or you lost it because there was always a big waiting list. So I said, you're on. I put you on the thing, so I'm going to turn this just over to you because you're big time for model girl who's always in New York sometimes. So and I'll have it was a big loft, so I built a like little apartment in there that I could use, even if she had somebody else. I could still be there anyway. So that's how my life rolled. So I got to know John really well, but more as a plain guy. I would college, when I lived in West Bath, and along, I always forget this. It's the road that it's where all the nightclubs and the restaurants and the stuff like that were on, you know, and it cut across. It paralleled 10th Street, and it cut across from way over on the west all the way over on the east side, kind of banged into Cooper Union. I always forget the name of that street. Pop into my mind. So, but anyway, in that West Village neck of the woods, John lived in this really beautiful, and he was right on the corner of that street and 6th Avenue, right across from where the basketball hoops are and McDonald's. And then if you went into the West Village went west of 6th Avenue along this road, it's right where the Halloween gay pride parade is every year. It's where the was anyway. So he lived on top. He had the top of this building, and he like plopped a house on top of the garden and grass, and it was really an amazing thing. And he kind of had his own little elevator to go straight up to his place. So that was another place I could, if I cruised into town and my other places weren't, I'd call them up and said, "Hey, John, what's you in town?" Or his wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, Jane's best friend. Right. Again, that's how I got to know John. So that was my thing. And Jane loved me so much. Like I said, that's a girl I should have married. One of them. There were about 5 women in my life that I should have married. I'd be a totally different guy, but I'd be probably a little more. Well, I'd be a different guy. But I loved them. They loved me. I'd have kids, and I'd have a lot more money. That's for sure. So, I came back from Brazil, right? It was probably in the late 80s or early 90s. And there was a thing called the Paris Commune that a friend of mine opened, and he had a great breakfast and then a meaty, a lunch that you could go, and then really fancy dinner and fancy Saturday and Sundays. But he was open all day long, right? And my buddy, she had one of her Miracle Grills on that road. And there were a couple other really great, like, cosmopolitan places you could go hang, right? And the what was left of the avant-garde New York hung out in those places. So I cruise into town. I call up a couple friends. Some are there, some aren't, some are busy. I call up John. John's on the list, and he says, "Oh yeah. This is a great time. I'm not doing anything. The girls are out of town. The kids are out of town. It's just me. I'd love it if you came by." And I said, "Okay, that's great." So I came by, and I kind of eased into New York. I went to a number of my clients and say, "I'm back. My phone still works. Leave me a message. Here's my pager." These are the days of pagers. And, so I started easing into work. And by the 90s, the Stoll Empire Mike Jr., he had an accident and died. And Grandpa died, in the early 80s. And things had changed, but I was still the dude. I still had my connects. I could still do whatever, right? So I'm easing into it. I'm getting back into the art world. Collabs. We're still doing shows. We're still gotten. We're the beautiful child of so the NEA and NISCA, and we have PS1 and the Knitting Factory and Franklin Furnace. These are all things that we helped start and then stepped away. Showed them how to get their own 501c3. But we were the umbrella groups of many of these things. So we were still affiliated with all these things, right? We helped start them, but our whole thing was not to run them, not to be the king, but to get things started and then get them their own 501c3 after they used us as an umbrella for however long it took them. And so, I'm doing all that stuff. And John and we get up late. I wake up to his little coffee pot, and he's always got some good little pastries that he's bought in the other day. And we have a little vat on his veranda and talk about this. And he usually gets the Times and about 5 other papers, and we kind of, mull through them. And then by about 10:30 ish, we go have a real breakfast, right? So we go down to the newspapers. So we've all got our own little sections that we are going to read rather than just kind of look at. And so we go down to this place, and we have our brunch, and we're sitting out right on the street there. It's nice. It's probably not. It was probably September or October. Still warm. It's still nice. And we're sitting out there, reading the newspaper and having our French breakfast, and really yum, right? So from then, by around 11:30, 12 o'clock, 12:30, we just kind of go along this and then jag over to 10th Street and walk over to where 5th Avenue is and 10th Street, and then go over right where the park is. Not Union Square. Is it Union Square? Might be. Yeah, it's Union Square. There's this like little neighborhood where the Con Ed building is. That it's like maybe 8 blocks this way, 4 blocks that way between, 5th Avenue and 3rd Avenue, and that was like old New York, because everything pretty much above Union Square is lots of, it's a grid from that point on. It's a grid, and so the and Andy Warhol's factory was right on Union Square, and right where I forget what avenue that was. There was 5th Avenue here and this other avenue, and 5th Avenue. Anyway, right there, I think that's where Broadway came down and smashed into 5th Avenue, and that's where 5th Avenue became Broadway. From that point, from Union Square down, it's Broadway. So, and this is all from my memory of like 40 years ago. I haven't been in New York City, being a New Yorker since 1988. And the only time I went back was in 2011 for one of my godchildren's weddings, because she wanted to get married on the Brooklyn Bridge, and she was all freaked out, that she'd get arrested. You need to come, everybody. And I said, listen, the Brooklyn Bridge, it's got this, pedestrian walkway. Just tell everyone to meet where you want us to meet at a certain time, and over there, and we do the whole ceremony, we'll be up there for about 20 minutes to an hour, and then walk down into Little Italy and go have your dinner. There won't be anybody to complain. So anyway, so we did that, and that's the last real time I've been in New York City, 2011. But before then, 1988. So everything I'm telling you is from memory, 1980. So we're sitting there, and we walk through there, and there's Weiler's. No, it starts with a W. Really oldest esoteric. You want some interesting book? They're the people, and they have all of these other companies. They're tied in with the Theosophical Society and the Thule Society and all these other societies, and they're their publisher. And they have about 20 different publishing names that they publish these esoteric books. They things like Alice Bailey stuff. I'm pretty sure they're the people who published the Course in Miracles. I mean, did the Blue Book. I mean, the Course in Miracles has been around forever, but somebody put it out and then put it into things like big book companies, where you could buy it instead of like for 400. Back in the day, you wanted that book, you almost had to pay $1,000 just to prove that you were serious, right? But once they wanted to get it out amongst the folks, it was put out as the Blue Book and Course in Miracles, and Barnes and Noble were the guys. They sold all three books, the text, the workbook, and the teacher's guide, and they sold them in a box of flashcards, each lesson a flashcard, which was a great teaching tool. And they sold that whole Megillah for $20. I remember someone gave me the Course in Miracles back in the 60s and said, be careful, this is $1,000. I'm putting you $1,000 by giving you these books. Anyway, and when I talk in my writing, especially the legend, I go on about the law of three. That's basically the Course in Miracles. Anyway, so there at John Weiser's, that's the name, Weiser's Bookstore. Go Google Weiser's. And so John and I kind of strolled over to Weiser's and to all different things. And all these different groups didn't always like each other, right? So there were different elements of Weiser's all over the place. And this one Weiser's, which was over in that little nest, and it's right kind of where Lexington Avenue starts. It's a hotel, Lexington Avenue Hotel, and it's a park there, a little park in front of that hotel. And that's where Lexington Avenue starts. And so we go to Weiser's, and you walk in, and the public can walk in, and there is books around and magazines and newspapers, and it's like a neighborhood bookstore, and there's a coffee shop, right? And then there is a wall, and the middle part is all glass, and you can see this even bigger bookstore back there, but there's a person with a cash register right at where you go into that other thing, and if you don't know the high sign, you don't get to go in, right? Because that's where these antediluvian books are. And they just don't want you to, get them all greasy. So anyway, you have to be in. They have to know you. I mean, it's straight out of that sign, that movie from with Karina Reeves. Where he's going after demons. Anyway. And they go into that nightclub where the black guy from, Haiti runs it. He's like the guy in between. And it's like the places where, get in, you have to go in. And the guy would pull a card from, a card, and you'd have to say what it was. Right? Because the guy's looking at it, so you kind of have to read, be able to kind of soul speak, right? So, and that's this bookstore. You had to. The guy either had to know you or you had to be able to show that you deserved to be in there. And John was the kind of guy, he was like a guy who's invisible, but the people who loved him as an artist, as a musician, were like, oh, John, get home. They get down on their knees and do please get up. So, York, because there wasn't as much of that, because there were so many other people, everyone would be bowing all day long, and that was the beauty of New York, and that all these people hung out, right? And now those people, the new groove are there now. So some girl was saying, "Oh, I wish I lived in your time." I said, "No, you're living in your time. You make it groovy. I mean, there are loads of groovy people out there doing the groove, and so you got to join on. Oh. Yep. Like I said, don't believe a word I say. So it's just a good story. So anyway, John and I are hanging out, and we go into Wiser's, and we go in the back there, and we're having. They have this stuff called, what's it called? I mean, it's like it's better than sex. It's a dessert. It's a pudding. It's an English Irish pudding. It's just unbelievable. Anyway, and really great coffee and real absinthe and real other kind of things to drink there. Anyway, so we're in there and we're looking at the books, and we're right, got a few here and a few there, and so the next day we do the same thing. Next day we do the same thing. Third day, um, we're at breakfast, and we're sitting outside, and John says, there's a guy over there across the street in the other coffee shop, and he's been sitting there. He was there yesterday, and now he's there again. And I saw him outside of Wiser's, right? So it's either one of those guys who wants to, ask, get on his knee, or he's got something to do with you. And so, okay, maybe. So anyway, we forget about it. We walk to Wiser's, and we're in Wiser's, and we're sitting in the front coffee shop. And because it has a little outside nook, right? Little, few seats out there. When it's warm, they open up the big doors. So the big doors, the little nook becomes part of the coffee shop. So anyway, we're sitting there in the sun, and this guy is sitting right over there. And he's wearing he's wearing spy clothes, black pants, black shirt, and a very nice jacket. I mean, like tailored jacket, and he is trimmed. Every part of his body is trim. I mean, he is amazing fit. And I look at his shoes, and he has got semi-military shoes, meaning those shoes he could run, he could jump, he could do a lot of things, and they got a steel toe. He could kick you and it would hurt. So John goes, you know what? I think that guy wants to kill you. I think he's a messiah. And that's John. John is, you think I'm, talking about conspiracy theories. John was like really into that. But he and I both, we love talking about this stuff, but we didn't believe anything. And I keep telling you, don't believe a word I say. But you should go to xratted.blogspot.com and Josh Booth. And go read my writings, right? And you should look at, if you're on the channel, the channel. Go look at, I have probably close to 1,000 shows, if not more. And they're all, they said, well, which one should I? I said, this is a training for you. Use your intuition, your gut. You got all these little creatures in your tummy. Listen to them. They're part of. I keep talking about all our relations. They're part of them, but they're part of you. So that coffee shop, and John goes, I think that guy wants to kill you. I said, what? And you have to realize, the year before, 2 years. Oh God, when was it? 70. Before I met Don. I was living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, Hasidic Jews. My landlord was a Hasidim rabbi. He had a Lubavitcher, meaning a place to train rabbis. I was all about I was studying, not just the Torah, but the esoteric side of the Torah, the Kabbalah. And so he was, I kind of knew Latin, and I kind of knew Greek, and I kind of knew Hebrew. I kind of know a lot of languages, in that if I use them, or if I live, when I lived in Brazil, I learned Portuguese. Now I know like 4 words, certain written languages are really, they're a code, so you can really, if you're into that code and understand the keys to them, you can read them relatively, not easily, but they come better to me. Almost where, if you read my stuff in English, you can say, wow, this guy is illiterate. No, I'm doing it. Everything I write is a code. just like Hebrew. You don't need to learn Hebrew, but just get the flow of how I write. Like I use numbers all the time instead of words. Like the word two. There's a number of twos. I just use a letter. The number two. Same with forward, forgotten. I just put a four in front of gotten or word and it works out as a code. Right? So, and John was really, really into all of that. So he was one of my guys I talked about codes and things of that nature. So what happened with the rabbi, he wanted me to be a real rabbi. I said, Rabbi, I'm Italian, I'm Irish, I'm Catholic. My godfather's a cardinal. You know, I don't know. I don't believe in anything. I just have faith and love. He goes, well, no one's perfect, but we need some new blood. And boy, are you new blood. So he really wants. So he kept hooking me up with interesting Hasidic women. And he hooked me up with one woman who was really amazing. And she was going to be the first female cantor for the government of Israel. She's bred to do this job. Amazing. And so she was coming to go to Juilliard to study music and then go up to a few colleges in Boston and get that classic, get a lot of other things. Because to be a cantor, you should just be that you should have a whole bunch of other stuff under your belt. So she was doing that and going to the she was the only girl in the rabbi school, right? And so he wanted me to hook up with her and marry into the family, right? And so he did. So he put us together. He let us. She's not supposed to, go out without a chaperone, but he says, "Well, I trust you impeccably, so now you're the chaperone." So this girl and I hit it off, but like brothers and sisters. And we must have been a brother or sister in another life because we were tight. We loved each other. We had so much fun. She laughed hysterically. She felt really great. She could let loose with me, be herself, not worry about anything. And then I started taking her uptown to black clubs. And I took her to this one real intense where all the old school musicians, and this is the 70s, so they were still all alive. And they played up there. And there was a guy who he was like Bill Graham, who, recorded all the rock and roll. He was recording all the jazz guys. He had and I helped him put that in there. And it was way uptown. It was up in the top. And so I took up there and it was like blacker than black, and Harlem's not blacker than black, but boy, this neck of the woods was. So I went up there and I kind of, but everyone knew I turned up there and she was excited, titillated. It was like, whoa. And we sat, I walked in, they gave me a table right on the edge of the stage. I knew all the guys up there and we're listening, and she is just in seventh because she plays a clarinet because that's a big Hebrew instrument and the saxophone, alto sax. So it kind of looks like a clarinet. So anyway, she's up there, and these guys are up there with the saxophone. She's just in love. And she's this one black guy, really tall, really strong, really top of his form, and, really focused on this, not letting it get in his way. And, all the greats were his teachers. And so he's, quite famous. I'm not going to mention who he is, but he, they do a set and they come down. He comes straight to me because this girl has been like, like little love things going to him, and he's coming back, and he comes down and he goes, "Oh, good to see you." Hugs me, gives me the, the handshake, the whole thing. And who is this? And I tell him who it is, and this is my friend, and she and I are. I give her a 411, and she just goes into music theory with this guy. And I'm not there. It's just going on and on and on about music theory, and she goes, I play alto. He goes, you play alto? So you go, you got your own reed? And she had her own reed with her. And he, come on back. And so we go in the green room, and he pulls out, and they start playing, and it's like, and I do become the ento, I'm now, right? So anyway, they do another set until about 2:30 in the morning. Then we go to this place for real good Southern African, not just Southern food, but Southern African food. And and then we walk home, right? We walk all the way down. We walk over to we walk down Fifth Avenue, and then cut over to where the mayor's house is, and there's this beautiful, you know, you know, jogging thing along the East River that goes all the way down to the Bowery, where we would get on the J and the M train to go to Williamsburg. And instead of that, we instead of taking the A train and then the J and the M, we walked, and they were like 10 steps. They were holding hands. They were like this is like the first night, right? And so we would do that, and we get to a point where there's like a cab stand, you know. And he goes, "Why don't you guys just take a cab home? I'll give you some money." I said, "I got this covered." He goes, "Okay." So he goes, "Listen, I'm going to be playing." And he had his own group, and he was going to be playing, at some hotel, like the big, the Plaza or wherever it was, in one of those, the Oakland or something. So, and he was a guy. There are a number of really jazz greats who played in all those kind of places all the time. That was their house, right? And they would have different other guys come in, and they'd have a trio or a whatever. And he did that a lot. That's how he kind of made his funds. Also sitting in on recordings. Anyway, so I'm going to be playing over at this place. Okay, so he goes, you guys can have a real nice dinner and hear the set, and then we'll go hear some music someplace else. And I said, okay. So they're like, we do that, we have that night, and it's like these guys are like. So again, we're walking down that path on the east side above the FDR Drive, and they're stopping, and it's the full moon's out. It's like straight out of Woody Allen's New York, and they're like making out, and I'm just like I get further and further back, but I still keep an eye on them. Anyway, long story short is I had to go someplace, right? So first night they meet, second night they're like, whoa. Third night I can't go out. I have stuff to do. I have to take care of something. And then the next night I have to go out of town and do something, right? And I come back about a week later, maybe two, after doing out of town project, and I go back to my loft in Williamsburg, and before I can even get there, my rabbi, he walks up to me like I took the subway, and he's like been waiting at this coffee shop. He comes out of the coffee shop and he's like, Al, gotta come with me. And what? He said, yeah, come with me. And so he hails a cab. We get in the cab. We go over to New York, and Freddie still had, you could go to New York to London for like $65. Like, what's this ticket? I'll put you on the bus, and you're gonna go on the airplane right here, right now. Here's $300 in cash and 200 pounds in English money, and don't come back. I said, what? He says, well, that girl who I trying to hook you up, he hooked up with the saxophone player and disappeared with him. And she is like, a resource. She's like the crown jewel in a certain group of folks in Israel, and they're pissed off, and they got a hit out on you with the Mossad. So you better get out of town and hide someplace where they're not going to find you. I said, how long? He goes, you got a good sense of things. Whatever, you go get this thing, and then probably, I don't know, 6 months, a year, 2 years, who knows? These guys have long memories. Anyway, so it was about a year and a half that I said, oh, fuck this, and they want to kill me, they can. So because no one, I was all over the world, and I saw no sign of any of that, and I was hanging out with people who would, even if I didn't understand that they were there, they would. So, I basically came back, and John was the first guy I hung with because I knew if anybody was looking at me strangely, he would notice it more than me. Anyway, we're in the coffee shop. So that's the backstory. And so I walk up to this guy who's, drilling through the back of my head. "Are you here to kill me?" And he looks up at me and goes, "I am." I said, "Well, how come you haven't? You had 4 days to do it. This is the fourth day. My friend here, he's noticed you for the last 3 days." He goes, "Is that John Kale?" I said, "Yes, that's John Kale. I love John Kale. Can I meet him?" I said, "Sure, you can meet him." Said, "Come on, come to our table. Come on." So he gets up, and "You sure it's okay?" I said, "You're going to kill me." "Yeah, sure it's okay. It's okay." So he sits down, they start talking, and those guys, they start talking like I'm not even there because John's really interested in all that stuff. And this guy had been in, before he was in Mossad, he was in the Israeli Air Force, right? And he was flying wild missiles, and John's a total, airplane freak too. So they're talking about all of that. By this time, I'm like, let's go down to China. I'm hungry. I need more than just um, these fine pastries here. It's lunchtime. Let's go. So we stepped out, hailed a cab, went straight to Chinatown, and got went down into the bowels, not into the tourist restaurants, but where the Chinese people are, right? And there's one place been their electrician forever. I worked for Hung and Young Electric, and this is Grandma Hung, and she wanted me to marry her daughter, which I would have. Man, that girl was, and but her father wouldn't. It was one thing to have a white boy working for him, but he needed me, but no. And it was another thing for her to date me to piss him off because he goes, she's 22. That's what they do. But Mary, you have this guy in my family? No. But Grandma, she still loved me. So I would go down there. She loved hearing me tell stories. I'd sit in the kitchen. They had all these great restaurants, all have a little dining room in the kitchen for the staff, for the people, for them to take it easy, for visitors like me that would come there. And she would just make, I know what to make you, right? And so took the side guy, his name was Yos. He took Yos and John, and we went there and had a total, crispy duck, everything, a meal for a king. And then we strolled back, because it was only about 40 blocks from there to John's house, and we went up. And the guy goes, now they're going to send somebody looking for me, and they're going to kill me if I don't kill you. And I said, well, this is New York. You can kind of hide out. And this is the West Village. All you got to do is wear a dress. And he goes, wear a dress? I go, yeah. He goes, how did you know? And this guy's secret, he wasn't gay. He wasn't homosexual, but he wanted to be a woman in the worst way. But John's wife, she was a woman beyond woman. I mean, because she came from a rich family. It was all about the bling, the dress, and this. So he walked her. She had her own, part of the apartment for her clothes. He goes, here, go through any of this you like, get it on. So he was in there, found her, she had more than one makeup table, so he's in there a while, again, his porch drinking, and the guy comes out, and he is knockout gorgeous. And I said, they're never going to find you. But I said, you didn't leave a trail that this is what you like to do in Israel. So no, I couldn't do the things I did if this was it, right? But this is my whole, since I was, 17, I used to do, no one see me. I would do it up, walk around my room, well, this is it, buddy. You're never finding you in the West Village. And so he did, he went and he first camped out there until John's family came back a week or so later. By that time, I found through another friend of mine a nice little divey place almost near, let's see. Yep, the world is going to keep going, Fish. It's people, because it's all the alpha and the omega, We aren't in a linear experience. No, we're here to learn how to ascend our soul into love's co-creation, however long it takes. And if we need to be miserable, the universe will make it so. But having Donald Trump for 4 years was really good. He was a wrecking ball beyond a wrecking ball, and he has destroyed the same old same, right? And if my little thing is that he wanted to lose this. It's folks, he won over 60 million votes. I mean, that's why the guys who do polls are like totally lost their shit because it's like forget about it. They have 1 hour, 1 minute, and 11 seconds. And so that's it's all good. Go out and do good. Start organizations, start restaurants, start artistic groups, start political parties. Do whatever you want to do. Go do it. Because that's all I've done my whole freaking life. And if you're reading Legend, by the end of this week coming, by Friday, by the 13th, I will try my best to get Legend number 6 up there, right? That is like everything I've written and re-edited and re-edited and re-edited. Like on my little computer says, copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy number 6, meaning that's how many copies of number 6 I have. I have like a copy of a copy of copy 1, copy number 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm on 6, right? And as soon as I put 6 up there, that I know you can go to xratted.blogspot.com and go to that link and it'll take you to 6, because you go to 2 or 3, it just takes you back to 1. I didn't do it right. Anyway, so Yost, lived his dream, had his good, he then got into John's, and who he really got into was John's wife's girlfriends. He was one of the girls. He would go out with them. I mean, he hid right in plain sight. And then they sent another person to whack me, and we were out and about, and he goes, and we were like in a big crowd, like in a park or something with the kids and stuff. And he noticed this guy. He goes, I know that guy. And I goes, well, does he know you, or is he looking at me? No, he's looking at you. He thinks I'm the nanny, because that's what he was doing with all these kids, John's wife, not girlfriend, their kids and her girlfriend's kids. That's how Yost started making some cash. He was right. So, and what better daycare for the rich and notable rock and rollers to have a Mossad agent taking care of your kids in a dress, So he goes, I'll take care of this. So he goes over there, right? And he sits down next to the park bench. And he's either got like, an ice pick or something like right here where it's going to go straight into the guy's brain. And they start talking, and he goes, it's very lucky. I know this guy really well, and he wants out too. I said, really? Does he like a dress? He goes, well, almost, but he's a little. And so anyway, he comes back, right, and he gets into the scene. But this guy, he's a down low drag queen, right, who likes, who is homosexual, right? Nothing wrong with that, but who is homosexual, right? Nothing wrong with that. But so we get him in the club scene uptown, and he disappears, right? So, I kind of, I have my little patron. I get paid by the rabbi. This is almost 2 years now. And he goes, okay, Al, all's forgiven. You can come back home. Because I still have my loft. He's kept my loft for me in Williamsburg, and I haven't met D yet, right? John's couch and other friends' couches, and I don't have to worry about Mossad killing me. And I now have 2 friends, and I then bring him down to this place called Puffy's down in Tribeca, run by Frank. And Frank was this guy, nice Jewish boy, parents in the restaurant biz, all that, and he wanted to be a mercenary in the worst way. So he had this bar for artists. He bought this building called Puffy's. Before Tribeca was Tribeca, it was a workers' bar. He ran it for a little bit as that, but the workers, went away. He looked really great apartment, but it was just a 3-story building, big, the whole, I forget what street it was on, but it was off of Hudson over on the west side, right near where Duane Park is, like 2 or 3 blocks up from Duane Park. So whatever that is. And it had been the workers' bar because there was 4 telephone buildings, and they all went over there to drink and have lunch. And so he bought it in the early 70s, and so by you know early 80s, it was it's where all the artists hung out. But it was such a long bar. I mean, it was a narrow building, but the whole side of the street, it was a pretty wide street, so the whole side was all glass, and then there were 2 floors above, and that was his apartment and his other whatever he played at doing. And so um, I took those 2 guys to hang with Frank because he knew every mercenary, every blood, wet work guy out of New York. And so they had this really interesting club of guys who liked to dress up like women who were either gay or bi or just drag queens and murderers. So it was an interesting group, and I was part of that. Not that I did any of that because no, I don't do that. But I knew all those guys. And at different points when somebody was in a kerfuffle about me, they would hear it in the grapevine and they would, put a stop to it. So, as a number of my clients would say, that I was an acquired taste, So, so that's the story of the Mossad guy dressing as, and changing Mossad, because a lot of those guys who had gone through that whole thing and thought it was their destiny, and then they just got tired of doing it, and they weren't serving the company; they were serving this other, the hidden hand, da 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 da. Because the hidden hand is everywhere; it is everything, and that's why I love Donald Trump, because he lies so much that everything he says comes around 180. And how could Of course, the Senate's going to be Republican, and the Congress is going to more Republican, but Joe Boy is going to be president, and it's going to be way worse than Donnie, So, but Donnie wanted this to happen, because what Donnie's going to go do is he's going to go start his own news network and be Donnie 24/7, and basically he has 70 million followers. 70 million people voted for him, more than that. That's half of the electorate, at least. And so he's going to go, and he's going to run in 2024, and he's going to win in 2024 if he's still, if the Egg McNuggets don't get him, So anyway, I think that's it. It's an hour and 9 minutes. So when we get to 1:10:10, I'm going to say, see you later again. Well, that was fun. I'm glad I did this and we didn't get popped off and had big enough, I found this Wi-Fi. This is a good Wi-Fi. It's on my Wi-Fi list now. It's only 30 miles from my front door. Not too. It's on a beautiful day like this. It's a beautiful ride. Right now, I'm going to go do a little shopping, that kind of stuff. Maybe go see a friend or two, and go from there. So, hand me some more thumbs up, guys. Remember, you can go talk to me in person at thedudewake42@gmail, and my PayPal is there. And a few people have been dropping some spare change in there, which is very nice. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I do live, that's what enables me to drive 40 miles to do this. Because a couple of weeks ago, I had no money to drive around. I had to keep enough to be able to get out, like a quarter of a tank. So I couldn't really, 40 miles one way and 40 miles, that's 80 miles. That's half of a quarter of a tank of my car. So if you want to keep driving, it works very nicely. And so that's the dudewake42@gmail, right? And my PayPal is there, so you can drop stuff in it. Thank you for all those who have, right? I just like to make a statement of thanking and to say, hey, guys, you want to do it, go for it. And again, go to xratted.blogspot.com. That's where my um, writings are, and it's under Griot Publishing. But if you just go to Google and put xratted.blogspot.com, it'll go straight there. If you put up Griot Publishing, there are other Griot Publishing spelled different ways than I do. I don't even know how I spelled it. There we go. So there it is. 1111111. Even better. Okay. I love you guys. I will try maybe Monday, maybe, but by Friday Friday will be the latest that I do a show again. And this one was fun. So sometime between now and Friday, I'll do another one. And probably same time I get out around. I always have a few little around the house to get and then leave. So I leave between 10 and 11 and get to where I'm going by 11:30. And then I do one of these or do whatever I'm doing and then I go there. So everybody who commented, thank you. Thank you, Fish. I don't have another pair of glasses to read the fine print. Divine, Fish, Anthony. Yes, he was. Like I said, they were all tired of doing stuff that wasn't for the betterment of Israel. That Israel, what it was when they were a kid, isn't what it was then, and that was the 70s and 80s. And so yes, and but you have to realize that. As I opened with Jimmy Dore, guys, go watch Jimmy Dore. He definitely has his own flavor and his own whatever, but he is really interesting. And so basically, our whole planet is run by the hidden hand. And if you go to XRATTED and read Legend, even the one that's up there, which is like I've already written another 100 pages and like 12, I've already edited it 15 different times. But like I said, this week, I promise I'm going to do my best to get my most recent copy up there and connected so you can really come straight to it. It'll be Legend 6. So, Fish is right. But bottom line about all this political stuff, it's worthless, and, if you die, if you're like, if you're in Syria getting bombed by everyone, it's not a good day, right? But I've been in those places, and it's amazing how much people live there. Meaning they really live. If you're getting bombed, if you could die any second from a bomb coming out, you don't even hear bam, you're gone, right? It's amazing how those people live. I mean, why do you think they stay there? Anyway, that's a whole nother story, and I gotta go. But I love you. Stay well, and remember, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as in heaven. See how I was saying that? That's part of the code. And that's how I write. So go check out my xratted.blogspot.com. Go look at everything I've written. There's a lot of stuff up there that you can actually get to pretty easily. So, gotta go. See you later. And I love this. It's not even 2 yet. Come on.